Hello, Saturday, United States of America. Leading economic indicators, looking good again, or still, should I say. The ones that the Fed can control are up, the ones that the Fed can't control are up, but not up much. And that is what has given us the next one, number 2, GDP, which is up for the fourth quarter of 2011. The first 3 quarters came in at about 1.2. The fourth quarter came in at about 2.8, giving us an overall of about 1.5 to 2, something like that. Very blah. Nothing, really. Not nearly enough mojo to give the whole economy a good wanging up. So it's just boring. So I got this chart from the same source, Economic Data. And it's because this one's a bit interesting. Going back to 1951, and you've got the string along the bottom, which you can see what they are. Have a pause and have a look to see what they are that make up GDP. But the real big changes have been the top two, obviously, which are both consumption. The blue one are consumption of goods going down, and the red one is consumption of services going up as a percentage of the composition of GDP, which is quite interesting. I imagine services to be education, health and things like that. Services, and goods are what goods is, and they are going down as a percentage. Complete swap over, and the going upness balanced by the going downness gives us GDP, which hasn't changed that much. But interesting to see what the components of GDP there are. And interesting in the blurb for these two charts, 1 and 2, was that a great component of the 2.8 of the fourth quarter of 2011, which gave the overall GDP a bit of reasonableness, was a lot of inventory build in the fourth quarter and selling aeroplanes. And it's quite liable that the first quarter of next year will be a bit low to maybe balance off the goodness that we had in the fourth quarter. So all in all, very, very average sort of GDPing by the United States of America. Okay. Overall big picture of what's going on around the world, OECD, but this is staying in the United States of America, and financial repression. US financial repression returns as the government keeps rates low while the debt load soars. Right. So this was how did the United States, United Kingdom et al. Get out of their huge debts of the Second World War. Financial repression was the gig, and 45 to 80 was that grey bar of financial repression. And what they're proposing now is we've just tipped into a new bout of financial repression. And at the end there you can see that the debts are flattening out to going down. And the whole idea is that those whole debt to GDP type numbers all go down over the next few decades, let's put it that way. For their various reasons, they say they've got to come down, they will come down, and financial repression is what worked last time. Let's give it another go. Which leads me to this Fred chart and personal interest income. And the poor old bastards that have done the saving and just got their money in the bank are going to get financially repressed to death. You can see the amount of money being paid out was 1.4, the billions and billions, trillion, 1.4 trillion, and now it's down to $1 trillion. And now pumping out $1 trillion in interest ain't bad. Lots of people are getting lots of interest, but not nearly as much as they used to, and that presumably will be going down as well. Even allowing for inflation, that'll still go down. Right. This was a slightly different article, but all talking about this whole financial repression gig. Past success. Though controversial, financial repression has an impressive track record. Between 1945 and 1980, when inflation was higher than benchmark interest rates, the United States and Britain cut their debt on average by more than 3% annually. This is Reinhardt's research, Carmen Reinhardt and Ken Rogoff. If you have negative rates for 10 years, that's a 30% debt reduction, and that's nothing to scoff at. That punishes savers, however, who see the value of the debt they purchased eroded by inflation. RBS bond analyst somebody or other compared the Fed's current low-rate regime with the US interest rate caps used 1942 to 51, aimed at lowering borrowing costs for a country at war. It would be another 4 years before another rate rise, he said. Rate repression can last longer than people have patience for. And it could be 4 years. I think it could be nearer 40 years. But, 4 years in economics seems an awful long way away. But that's even what the Fed said it's going to be, 4 years, stroke 6 years, stroke 8 years, stroke have a stroke and then die with no savings left. Right, so that's our macro-ish picture. And over in Europe gives us another picture of more plugged in to not just retirement and savings people, but people that actually want to do the working thing. This is from The Guardian, I think. Or is this The Telegraph? Doesn't really matter to you, does it? The number of 16 to 24-year-old Spaniards out of work rose to 51.4%. That's The Telegraph, I think. In December, over half, 16 to 24-year-olds in Spain. I don't think that's a solid basis for anything, is it really? More than double the European average, but even so, that means the European average is well over 20. The national unemployment rate hit nearly 23. Spain's young have been dubbed Generation Cero, or the Nini, neither in work nor full-time education, and for many their only hope of seeking a better future is moving abroad, sparking fears of a brain drain. But where are the poor Spanish people going to go to get jobs? There aren't 100 countries in the world where it'll be easy for Spaniards to go to get jobs. Not with a good education, and this is the problem. These European people are educated to a really quite high standard. Another angle into this Europe thing from this morning's Financial Times: call for EU to control Greek budget. And yes, that is not a wild headline. That is what they're talking of. The German government wants Greece to cede sovereignty over tax and spending decisions to a Eurozone budget commissioner to secure a second 130 billion bailout, according to the copy of the proposal obtained by the Financial Times. They can't do it, basically, can they? I mean, you've got to think of power here, and you can see the German power and the what they want to represent to their constituents, the German people. But how can a Greek politician do that? How can a Greek politician just hand over power to the Europe budget commissioner from Europe? A very, very hard thing to do. In what would amount to an extraordinary extension of European Union control over a member state, the new commissioner would have the power to veto budget decisions taken by the Greek government if they were not in line with targets set by international lenders. The new administrator, appointed by other Eurozone finance ministers, would take responsibility for overseeing all major blocks of expenditure by the Greek government. So the Greek government would put up huge amounts of spending proposals. The commissioner would veto them, and then what would happen? Absolute chaos. Not that it's not absolute chaos now. So, this is another drive on the working front. This is from The Guardian. These days we tend to talk about the divisions in Europe as one between net creditors and debtors. In reality, this is just a sideshow. It's a hell of a sideshow. There is a much more fundamental gulf, hinted at by Angela Merkel in her Davos speech yesterday, between countries with organised industrial training systems such as Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, Scandinavia, Austria and Switzerland, all currently with jobless rates between 3% and 7%, and those with much higher rates of unemployment, often in double digits, in peripheral Europe. Those northern core countries think they're onto something with their organised labour and the government being plugged into the industry system and all of it working together. Let's get towards another grab from this Guardian article. And it's not just the German system of apprenticeship and all the others, schemes that could do with being copied. One of the main reasons why Germany's economy was able to recover so quickly after the downturn was the system of short-time working support, Kurzarbeit, introduced in the 1920s and extended in recent years. Funded by an employment insurance levy, it pays for firms to keep workers for 6 to 12 months, provided employers can show their businesses are in a cyclical and not structural downturn. Imagine a small engineering firm that ran into financial trouble in 2008. Rather than letting go of the 17-year-old apprentice who had recently joined the firm, it would have been able to keep the employee on board and then benefit from their experience when the economy was back on its feet. Even if the company had gone bust, the apprentice would, by law, have been sent to another company. This obviously worked for the core countries in the 2008 and onwards Great Recession. It might work for them in the coming recession. But to get the other countries that have gone on the Anglo-Saxon quick hire and fire way of doing things, round to doing that way, you can guarantee if they ever got round to it, and the trouble it had caused in their economies by the time they got there, it wouldn't work in the recession that arrived then for them then. It's just so difficult. You can't all be the same. People never be the same. There will be winners and losers at various times. But to try and say that that is the way, so they are the great exporters, so Spain, Italy, Portugal, Greece, all of them should go to this apprenticeship system and be great exporters, and then presumably the UK do it, the US do it, Japan do it, China does it. Who the bloody hell is going to buy all these goods if everyone's exporting? This is the problem. It's like life. There are winners and losers at various times, and then later, if life is ever fair, which it isn't, it flops over, and then the losers become winners and the winners become losers. For the moment, the core are the winners, but they are shackled on the side of a mountain face to the losers, which is causing them an awful lot of trouble, because their winning is causing them to lose. May see you tomorrow, may not. Bye.